The annual rainy season is about to commence in Lagos, and whenever it rains, life becomes miserable for some people because of the adverse effects of it. If only it's possible, the wishes of some inhabitants of Lagos will have been that rain should not fall at all because of its negative impact, which is not limited to the displacement of people, loss of properties, and lives. Sequel to this development, the Cable Plus Property Group met with the Permanent Secretary, Lagos State Ministry of the Environment, Office of the Drainage Services, Engineer Nuruddin Olalekan Shodende, to inquire and discuss the issue of flooding in the state and the efforts of the government at minimizing its effects on the people. During the meeting, the Permanent Secretary, Engineer Shodende, highlighted the causes of flooding in the state, its effects on the people, and how it can be managed by the inhabitants and the role of the government in managing it. The Permanent Secretary, Engineer Nuruddin Olalekan Shodende, explained the causes of rainfall and differentiated between storm water runoff and flooding. He said storm water runoff is the excess water that flows over land surfaces such as roads, parking lots, and rooftops, which is not absorbed into the ground but flows into storm drains, rivers, lakes, and other bodies of water. Whereas flooding is an overflow of water onto land that is normally dry, which happens during heavy rainfall when ocean waves come on shore or when dams break.
Storm water runoff. Rainfall is that body of water, that volume of water falling from the sky onto the ground. That is rain. When it touches the ground and is flowing, runoff.
Okay.
So storm, rainstorm, rainwater, storm, runoff. So anything water that flows on the ground after a rainfall event, are referred to as storm runoff in this context.
Okay.
So I would say flooding, because not all storm runoff leads to flooding.
Oh, okay.
Flooding is actually when you have water stagnated, not going anywhere, or storm runoff that is now so huge that is now disturbing movement or livelihood. That is some form of flooding. But when it is flowing without disturbing anybody, we just say storm runoff. When it starts disturbing, it becomes flooding. So if I said flooding, I'll be misleading the audience.
According to the Permanent Secretary, there are several types of flooding, but the three major types in Lagos are river, coastal, and flash flooding.
Yes. We have what we call the urban flooding, which is we call flash flooding. That Lagos is an urban center. So we have flash flooding, which oftentimes is man-made. It's not natural. Right? We have river flooding. Very easy to understand. River flooding along a river bank. So when there is rainfall and the river stage, when we say river stage, the height of the water in the river, that's a stage, goes high. God has naturally provided wetlands abutting the river to temporarily store this increase in the volume of the river. But if perchance you find yourself in such low-lying area, you will feel the impact of that river flooding. That is a natural situation. But it becomes a flooding event when people are now living in low-lying areas without adequate provision to live in such an area, to live with the water or to naturally cohabit with natural habitat of that area. That's the second type. The third type is coastal flooding. Along the coast where you have water coming from the ocean due to high sea waves or whatever, to come. So that are the three types of flooding that we can suffer in Lagos. But the two that we feel the most is the first, flash flooding, which is caused by us, and the river flooding equally caused by us. Because river flooding naturally should go on and off without us even knowing the river stage is increasing or decreasing. Because when there's rain, the river collects everything. When the rain stops, the area will go down again. And let's talk about the flash flood. What I said is man-made. Take a mind back to the natural cycle, what cycle I mentioned earlier, that the biggest infrastructure is the earth. What have we done to ourselves in Lagos? Look at your compound where you live. What is the compound like? Concrete. Huh? Yes. So you have sealed and distorted a natural process.
The permanent secretary said that the primary cause of flooding in Lagos State is the poor drainage system, which is incapable of handling the volume of water that comes with heavy rainfall. Other factors responsible for flooding include the blockage of drainage channels by wastes, construction of waterways, and inadequate urban planning.
The new area I want to move into provided a plan for all infrastructure before we start moving in. I'll give an example. If you want to plant in the low-lying area, I don't have any qualms against that. But how high are you sand filling above the flood line? What area are you providing for the storage of that water that you are going to meet in that low-lying area? Because that low-lying area or wetland was naturally created to store or to be a buffer for runoff. So if you are going to live in that low-lying area, what are you providing for that natural habitat that is the one that you are trying to displace? You can't displace water. Do you understand? You can't displace water, but we have to provide for it. So if we have planned very well, we can actually manage flooding situations in Lagos.
Effects of flooding on people are numerous and devastating. Flooding leads to loss of lives, displacement of people from their homes, damage to properties and infrastructure, the spread of waterborne diseases, and economic losses due to disruption in economic activities. The permanent secretary, Engineer Nuruddin Olalekun Shodende, during the interview said that flooding cannot be prevented but can be managed. He emphasized that managing flooding in Lagos State is the government's and the people's responsibility. He mentioned the role of government in constructing modern drainage systems and dredging water channels to ensure that water flows easily.
So what we do is to ensure that the conveyor system, which are the drainages, because the drains are just a conveyor system now. For the water not to flow on the road or on the ground, you have drains. But because the volume of water that is running off is more than the volume capacity of the drain, it comes on the road. But we ensure that this conveyor system is free of all obstacle, so that it will keep working efficiently and effectively. So within a couple of time, 1, 2, 3 hours, whatever flooding that you are feeling will dissipate.
He also frowned at the attitude of people who throw refuse into the drains directly or encourage it indirectly. This attitude exhibits the problem of flooding in Lagos because when drains are blocked by refuse, water accumulates on the streets and causes flooding. He encouraged people to dispose of their waste properly and refrain from throwing refuse into the drains. He further said that physical planning should continuously have zero tolerance for construction on waterways and flood-prone areas to reduce the impact of flooding. This year's annual rainfall season is fast approaching. We therefore encourage our viewers, listeners, and residents to ensure that drainage systems are not blocked with refuse. Clean your surroundings and avoid any action that can contribute to flooding. Together, we can minimize the effects of flooding in Lagos State. Till we come your way again, kindly subscribe to the YouTube channel at Cable Plus Property and follow us on all our social media platforms.